The Black Coat, a novel by Neamat Imam. Part 1, Chapter 2, Assessing the Ash. It was now time to take a good look at the country, to record the scope of the devastation. It was time to find those still alive and to mourn the ones who were lost forever. The wounded and injured needed care. Those who had lost everything needed help to heal their pain. There were the stressed, the psychologically traumatized, and the homeless who needed a moment of calm. But above all, and despite all this, we needed to celebrate the heroism of our people. I went from district to district, village to village, to understand how individuals had coped with the horrors of the war and how they now felt about living in a liberated country. I spoke with hundreds of people who had been displaced, who had lived in slums for months, but now expected something better. I submitted my reports with photographs. They were duly printed. Sometimes I spent hours speaking with freedom fighters who had gone to the front. I wanted to know what had motivated them so elementally that they had not feared for their lives. It was an old question, but I asked it every time as if it were new. Every person faced that question in his own way, in his own time, and every person must have his own answer. I wanted to know what their answers were. They all believed in the leadership of Sheikh Mujib. They believed that if the country was not free now, under his direction, it would never be free. Some said they did not go to war for the country. They went for him. They did not know what they were doing. He said they must go, and they did. One old man whom I met aboard a ferry on the Padma gave me an absolute answer. If he calls upon you, you can't just say no, or say you're afraid to die. It is impossible. Are you an animal? Is there no shame in you? You say, I'm here and I'm ready. You say, I am grateful that I live in Bangladesh, and I lived during the time of war. You thank Sheikh Mujib for seeking your help. He asked me if I had gone to the front. I had not, I replied, suddenly unprepared, his sharp, penetrating eyes filled with overwhelming contempt. I don't speak to you, he said, as he slowly moved to the other end of the ferry, holding firmly onto his underarm crutches. Whoever you are, you're not a Bengali. You're not Sheikh Mujib's man. I don't speak to you. Some of them gave me beaten rice and cups of milk to recover my energy. Some invited me to join them for a lunch of pumpkin curry and roti. During these meals, I tired them with my relentless curiosity, and they baffled me with the details of their narratives. They wanted to speak, most of them, and while speaking they became immensely excited, as if they were still at the front, still in the war with 303s on their shoulders, crossing mountains and submerged rice fields. In Mymensingh, I met a middle-aged gentleman who introduced himself simply as the commander. He had an excellent sense of geography. He drew a small map in the yard with a stick and gave me a visual description of where they had fought, faced the most horrendous resistance, and swum a raging river on a stormy night to rescue their fallen comrades. He told me he had heard the voice of Sheikh Mujib in the fall of the waves and the sound of the thunder that had helped him overcome his fear during the battle. It was obviously an exaggeration. I looked at the commander. He was a strong man with short hair, a cobra tattoo on his back, and a clean-shaven face, wearing heavily aromatic aftershave. Quite the opposite of the sort of bearded village elder with a Quran clutched to his chest, who might believe in superstition. I left the yard, confused and lost, and stood on the path facing the open south. One of the commander's disciples followed me there. He said he knew I did not believe the commander, but it did not matter now because the war was over. He said he had also heard Sheikh Mujib's voice several times during the war. You may not believe me either, but you may believe in God. At this moment I can only tell you that if you believe in God, you must believe in Sheikh Mujib. In early 1973, I was assigned to visit Gangasagar in Akaura to write a piece on Mustafa Kamal. He was a martyr of the war. When he and his fellow fighters came under heavy attack from the Pakistan Air Force, he decided to give his men the opportunity to escape. Pakistani soldiers shot him, then bayoneted him to death. Raihan Talukder, whose brother Wahab Talukder had also been killed in the Gangasagar assault, offered me a bed for the night. With an 8-hour return journey before me, I decided to accept his hospitality. He took me around the village, introducing me to his neighbors respectfully. Khalek Biswas, an eminent journalist from Dhaka, he told people, and very close to Sheikh Mujib. I did not know what prompted him to introduce me like that. Probably he thought everyone interested in history and politics and living in the capital was close to Sheikh Mujib. I remained silent. If the invisible presence of the Prime Minister made my life easier in a remote village, who was I to complain? In the evening, I worked on my report by the light of a lantern. Raihan Talukder went to sleep in the inner room, but got up every few minutes to inquire whether or not I needed another glass of water or perhaps a cup of tea, or if the lantern had enough kerosene, and finally if he should tell me the stories of Gangasagar once again, to make sure I had all the necessary information for my assignment. I asked him if he was aware that the Bangladesh army was preparing to decorate Mustafa Kamal with the title Bir Shrestha. Are they? He said. I asked if he knew what that title meant. He looked at me with wonder. Mustafa Kamal is one of the 7 great heroes of our liberation war, I explained. Bir Shrestha is the army's highest recognition of bravery. Still, it did not seem to make much sense to him. There are more than 7 great heroes in the Gangasagar area alone, he said. What about those who died with him? Did they die any less than he? I realized it would not be easy to make a philosophical point about death and heroism to him. Telling him that there were levels of valor and that there were many kinds of good deaths, even if all of them happened in the same place at the same moment, triggered by the same cause, would end in futility. He had already accepted death as the great leveler. The simple solution was to ask him if he thought there were differences between him and Sheikh Mujib, though both of them loved our country. There were, he said immediately, many. What kind of a question is that? I knew that would be his only response. Sheikh Mujib is not an average human being like us, I said. He is special, superior and incomparable. In the same way, there is something special about Mustafa Kamal that separates him from other martyrs. Raihan Talukder accepted my point thoughtfully. After he left, I put out the lantern and tried to visualize the very moment when Mustafa Kamal had decided to take charge of the situation. I wanted to enter his heart. I wanted to be a blood cell in his veins, to see what his eyes had seen in that enormous chaos. I wanted to experience how a simple moment, a moment in a small village and of horror and ferocity, had defined a whole life and made everything else insignificant. I wanted to imagine I was him, a non-commissioned soldier, telling my mates that I was their protector, their most dependable guardian angel. I could bargain with death and successfully deny or postpone or defy it for them. Then I wanted to see how my end crept up on me, inch by inch, following my decision. A decision that he had taken for me. A decision that I had taken for him. I woke up early and walked dreamily to the spot where Mustafa Kamal was killed. It must have been the place itself that had influenced him to take his decision, an influence he could not ignore. I walked around with my shoes soaked in the dew and filled my chest with cold, translucent air. I walked from side to side, corner to corner, stepping on my footprints, looking around, looking for something I did not know existed, but hoped would explain to me the heart of the place. I found nothing. It was a place of nothing. It had been a place of nothing for everyone today and yesterday, and it would be a place of nothing for centuries. That was what I understood. I am not Mustafa Kamal, I thought then, to satisfy myself, to cover up my truth. I do not have his eyes to see, his heart to feel. his moral stature to commit to serving the life force. Whatever I will see or feel will be mine, completely mine, not his. I felt a small vibration in my fingers and a mild increase in my heartbeat, and my footsteps became slower and more lethargic, and finally stopped. That was mine, I knew. It was not vast, definitely not as immense and overwhelming as Mustafa Kemal's feeling, but it gave me something. The sun came out, making the surroundings luscious and flamboyant. Raihan Talukder joined me. I asked him what time of day it had been when Mustafa Kemal was killed, whether it was a morning like this, or a dark, cloudy day, or an evening retiring fast into night. He did not answer, as if it was no longer necessary to know what time of day it had been. Mustafa Kemal would have made the same decision no matter what. Raihan Talukder sat at the foot of a bamboo clump. I sat beside him, and we looked at the field before us as if something was happening there. The past was unraveling, and Mustafa Kemal was advancing towards the very moment of his non-existence like an oyster creates a pearl, little by little. Back in Dhaka, I examined the entire liberation war from Mustafa Kemal's perspective. I considered his final moment as a long moment that lasted 9 months, the entire course of the war. I believed it could last longer, until eternity if need be, until all the dictators in the world fell and all discrimination came to an end. Together, Mustafa Kemal and his fellow fighters made one large moment of truth. Their eyes did not see, their nerves did not feel, their rational faculties did not function, but their human spirit worked without fail. By engaging with that moment, they knew they were serving the most valuable and inevitable cause in human history, the cause of freedom. I posted a copy of the article to Raihan Talukder. I was grateful to him for his hospitality and friendship, I wrote in a note. The first-hand information he had provided was absolutely invaluable. If he ever came to Dhaka, even for a day, he must see me. It would be a pleasure to buy him a cup of tea. Life moved on. I did not hear back from him immediately, nor did I bother to send him another letter, because I had new stories to focus on and new assignments to complete. Until one morning, a young man appeared at my door and gave me a letter.